Hey guys, welcome to today's video, and in today's video we'll cover how to make a simple gun, an enemy system in Unreal Engine 5. So in this video you'll learn how to create a basic animation for your gun like this, and it'll also show you how to create an ammo system. So after a certain number of shots you'll have to reload, which also has its own animation. And we'll also cover how to create a line trace so we can identify whether the bullet has hit anything, and then using that line trace we can make this enemy character play a death animation after a certain number of shots. Let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to need to do is get the model of our gun. So the one that I'm using specifically, I'm going to link in the description, but right now we can see that it's in many different parts over here. So to combine all of them, we're going to select all the parts, we're going to drag them into the scene, and we can scale them to the size that we want, or first we can actually merge them. So go to the top left corner, and then look for modeling mode, and then in X form we want to select merge, and we can call this gun or whatever, and then just click accept. Now as you see, it's now become one mesh. You can see that in the outliner over here. But one thing we also want to do is we want to change the pivot point so we can rotate the gun more accurately from the base. So how we're going to change that is, again, in X form we want to look for edit pivot, then we want to just select bottom to make sure it's at the bottom. Also want to center it, then we can just move it backwards, and we can move it down and a little bit more until it's right about at the bottom center of the handle over here. Then we click accept, and now we can see that when we rotate it, the gun is still staying in the same spot, but it's just rotating up and down, which we will use for the shooting animation. So then go into your BP first person character, and then your viewport, you want to click on the first person camera. You want to add a static mesh, and sometimes it automatically adds a couple static meshes, but we just want to delete them, and we can leave one, and then we can set the static mesh to the gun that we created. So let's look for it over here, and it should be this one, and it is. So we can rotate it, and then we can scale it so it would be appropriate for the size that we want. So over here I'm going to use 0.125 for each of these, and then I can also move it into the position I want, and we can just check to see. So okay, so we need to move it more here and a little more up. Let's check it out. So this seems good, so I'm going to leave it like that. Actually, I'll move it down a little bit, and that's about it. So now we're going to go into the event graph, and we're going to create the event for the animation. So right click and search add custom event, and we can call this shooting anim. So out of the main pin we're going to look for add timeline, and we can just click enter, and then double click inside the timeline, and we want to change the length to the duration of the upwards animation, so the gun going from its standard position to pointing upwards. So we should keep something short, like 0.05 seconds, and then we want to add a track and add a float track. We can just keep it as new track 0, and then anywhere over here we can right click and click on add key to curve float 0, and then the time over here, first we're going to do 0 and the value 0, and then we're going to add a key, and then the time is going to be the length of the track, so 0.05, and the value is going to be 1. We can compile and save. Then when we go into the event graph, next to the timeline we want to right click, and we want to look for a lerp. We want to look for a lerp under float, and then the alpha we plug into new track 0, and then from update, first we want to get our pistol mesh over here. I'm just going to rename it to gun, and then let's go into the viewport first, and let's see. So I'm gonna click on E to rotate, and then if I rotate up, as you see over here, this red, the X rotation is reducing by 10. So essentially what we want to do is we want to set the X rotation to -10. So in the event graph, the B value of this lerp should be -10. And then we're going to drag out of gun, and we're going to set relative rotation. I don't know why I duplicated, but it's okay. Then we want to right click on the rotator and split pin struct, and we want to plug this into update. And then the new rotation X should be the return value of the lerp. And essentially we also want to look for the other default rotation. So over here, this is set to -79.999, so we just want to copy that value. Then the event graph, so that's the Z rotation, we want to set the Z rotation to the same thing as it was in the viewport. So essentially what this code is going to do is it's going to smoothly make our gun point upwards. And to make it point downwards, we're going to essentially repeat the process, but first we're going to add a delay to ensure that this timeline has been completed first. So we set the length to this timeline as 0.05. So we're going to set the delay over here as 0.05, but we'll add a small delay just to make sure nothing wrong happens. So we'll do 0.051. And then we'll add another timeline. We'll drag out and look for add timeline. And then we can double click, and then we can make it, let's say we'll keep it 0.4 seconds this time. Actually, we'll keep it 0.5 seconds as the length, and then we can add a track and a float track. And we can click anywhere, add key to curve float, time as 0 and value as 0. And then we just repeat it. This time we set the time as the max, which is 0.05, and the value is 1. Compile and save. Then again, next to this pin over here, we want to right click and look for a float lerp. The alpha should go into new track 0. And then we're going to go from, instead of 0 to -10, we're going to go from -10 to 0. And then we're going to get this gun again and set relative rotation and plug this into update, and then we can right click and split this pin structure, return this into X, and then we also want to copy this, plug that into the rotation for Z, so everything stays the same. So that will essentially allow us, that should be our gun shooting animation, so we can actually test this. I'm going to look for left, so in the event graph, underneath I'm going to right click and look for left mouse button. Then for pressed, firstly, before we move on, I'm just going to break this link and set this to play from start and not for play. So again, out of this delay, we want to make it play from start, because sometimes what happens is if it's in just regular play, when we call the shooting animation for the second time, the movement happens, but it's not smooth. So we want to play it from start so the animation happens every single time. So then in pressed over here, let's just call shooting anim, and we can go and test it out in our world. So if I left click, yeah, the animation is happening, and it's totally fine. So you can experiment with the values of the lengths of the timeline to make it look a little better, but for now I'll be happy with this. So now that we've got the animation for the gun, we actually want to create the logic that will essentially create the line trace that will detect whether our bullet has hit the character or not. So we created this left mouse button and the shooting anim. So out of shooting anim, we're gonna look for line trace by channel. Then the start is going to be, so we want to drag out our first person camera. Then we want to get world location, and that is going to be the start. Then again, out of first person camera, we're going to get forward vector, and then we're going to multiply that by a float. So in this B of B value over here, we want to right click and change it to float. Then this value over here is essentially going to be the distance that the bullet covers. So you don't want the distance to be too high, otherwise it could create some lag. So I'm going to keep this at 1500, which is essentially 15 of these cubes over here in your Unreal Engine world. And then out of this get world location, I'm gonna add. Then we want to add the value of this multiplication. Then this pin we plug into end. And then the draw debug type we can keep for duration, which will allow us to see the red line when we shoot. But before you put your game up for production, you want to make sure this is none so the user can't see it. But for production, we'll keep it like this. Next thing is, out of this return value, we want to get a branch. So essentially whatever comes out of this branch will only happen if there was a hit. So if there was a hit, this return value will go to true, otherwise it'll be false. And out of out hit, we want to drag out and we want to break hit result. And then we can expand it. So now we want to add another branch. So a quick way to do that is by holding down B and left clicking. And the condition should be actor has tag. Then the tag is going to be the tag that's that your enemy character has. So here's my enemy character, and then over here in the component section, we want to click on the character, the BP killer itself. Then we want to search for tag, and then you can add a tag, but make sure it's under actor, not under mesh or character movement or capsule component. You want to make sure it's the actor tag. So we already have a tag for my character over here. So I'm just going to select that. Now I'm going to go back into my BP first person character. And the tag is going to be enemy, which is the same tag over here. And this is going to go into this true. And then the target is going to be the hit actor. So essentially what this is going to do is going to check if the actor that's been hit by the line trace has the tag enemy. So after we've got that, what we want to do next is we want to drag out of actor again, and we want to apply damage. And we want to plug this into true. The damage can be however much we want, but I'm going to keep the damage to 10, and I'm going to give my enemy like a health of 50 or something like that. So let's check this out. So if I left click, we can see that a line trace is appearing, and it becomes a little square when it's hit an object. So my gun is actually shooting. So now I'm going to show you how to make the enemy die when they've been hit a certain amount of times. So now you want to go inside your enemy blueprint, and then inside your enemy blueprint in the event graph, you want to right click and look for event any damage. So essentially what happens out of here is it signals whenever any damage has been applied to the actor, which is exactly what's happening over here. When our bullet line trace hits the actor, we apply some damage. So then firstly we want a variable called health. So the way we create that is we just add a variable, and we want to make sure it's a float. Then we can compile and save, and the default value should be whatever health you want your enemy to have, and it should be in a reasonable proportion to the damage dealt. So over here my base damage dealt is 10, so my health is 50, so it takes about 5 hits for the enemy character to die. So what we're going to do is we're going to first set the health to, we're going to get the health, and then we're going to subtract the damage, and we can set the health to the new health. But first we want to check to make sure that the health is not already at the lowest level. So we want to get health again. We want to get not equal to 10. So why did I choose 10? So if the health is on 10 and he takes damage, then the health will become 0. So out of this main pin, we want to get a branch. So essentially, if the health is not 10, it will continue reducing health. But if the health is 10, then it will play the death animation. So out of false, we want to get do once. So it will only play the death animation once. And then if the character is running at us, we want to get the character movement, and we want to stop movement immediately. And then we want to get the mesh. Then we want to play animation. and then you select your animation. So for example, I'll choose falling forward death. If you guys would like a video on how to correctly animate any character, just leave the comment in the description and I'll look into it. So let's check this out. I'm gonna drag my BP killer into here, and I'm gonna shoot him now. If I shoot him once, nothing happens. Shoot him twice, thrice, 4 times, and then when I shoot him in the 5th time, as you see, the animation played and he's fallen down and died. And you also want to make sure, just to make sure there are no errors, in your capsule component, you want the collision to be block all dynamic, so the line trace gets actually blocked and it detects that the character is there. So since we've now covered how to kill the enemy and the basic shooting logic, I'm going to show you how to create the reload animation. But first we're going to have to create a variable that actually stores the amount of ammo. So over here in the variable section, we want to add, we can just call this ammo, and we want to make sure it's an integer because it only stores whole numbers. Then the default value should be the ammo that you want the player to start with. So for my pistol, I'm just going to have 6. And then in the left mouse button pressed over here, first we want to check if the ammo is not 0, so we can drag out and get ammo. Then we want to get not equal to, then we want 0. Then we want to get a branch. We can do that by holding down B and left clicking. Then this should be the condition, plug it into the condition, and then just connect these pins. So basically this code will only happen, it will only shoot if it's not equal to 0. But we also first want it to reduce the ammo every time we shoot. So let's just get ammo, and then we can call decrement int, which reduces it by 1. We can plug that in. So we can check that out now. So if I shoot, it will continue working, but now it should stop after 6 shots. It stopped me from shooting. The animation is not playing anymore and the line trace is not playing. So how do we make it reload? So similar to this shooting animation, we're going to create a reload animation just anywhere. I'm going to right click and get add custom event, and we'll call this reload anim. So for the reload, I'm just going to make it pretty simple and make the gun move down and then move back up. So first we're going to add a timeline. So we're going to drag out of here and add timeline. Then we can double click inside to open up the timeline viewer. Then the length, I'm going to keep it as 0.7 seconds. Then I'm going to add a float track. And I'm going to right click anywhere inside and then add the curve float, add a key essentially. And the time should be 0 and the value should be 0. Then we do that again, except here the time is the max length, so 0.7, and then the value is 1. We can compile and save. And then inside our event graph, we want to get our gun again. And here, first we want to set relative location this time because we're moving it up and down and we want to split the pin struct. We can plug this into update. So let's see where we're going to move it. So go back into viewport. And then I'm going to click W to move. So if I move it up and down, we can see over here that the Z value is changing. But first we want to copy the X and the Y values. Let's just make them whole numbers, 20 and 17, and we'll keep this as minus 15. So we'll copy this first, the X value. So minus 20. We can close BP killer. We'll keep this as 17, the Y value. The Z value, minus 15, that's the initial value. So between these, I'm just somewhere here, I'm going to right click and look for lerp, and we're going to lerp float. The A value should be minus 15, the initial Z location. Then let's move it down by this much. Let's just see how that looks. Okay, I think I want to move it down a little bit more. So let's just say we'll move it to minus 27. Minus 27. Let's just bring this up back to minus 15. And then we want to plug the alpha into new track 0, and this return value we plug into new location Z. And then next we want to add a delay. So out of this exec pin we want to add a delay, and it should be a little bit more than this length. So 0.7, I'll do 0.71 just so there's a little bit of a grace period. Then out of completed we want to add another timeline. I'm going to keep it at the same length of 0.7, and then we want to add a track, a float track. We want to add a key, and we want to set the first one to 0, 0, and then we want to add another key and set the time as the max length, so 0.7, and the value is 1. We want to compile and save. Then we go into the event graph. We want to add another lerp, so we right click and look for lerp float. Then the alpha should go into the new track, and we reverse these values. So we'll set A as B and B as A. So we want to set the A as -27 and the B as -15. Then we want to get the gun, and we want to set relative location. We want to split the pin struct, and we want to plug this into update. We want to plug this into Z, and the X and Y we'll copy from here, 20 and 17. So that should be our reload animation. Let's test it out, but first just make sure these are plugged into play from start for both of the timelines. And then underneath I'm going to look for R key. Just search up R key. We can scroll down and we can look for R. So R is over here. We pressed it. We want to be able to call the reload anim. Let's test it out. So he's going up and down. So let's just add a little longer delay. Let's say 2 seconds, so 2.71. We'll add it to the original delay. See? Stays down for a bit, and then after 2 seconds it should come up. But as you see, if we click R multiple times over here, it just starts tweaking out. It keeps replaying the animation from the beginning. So how do we fix that? Out of pressed, we want to get a do once. Well, I'll show you a quick way to get do once. You hold down O and left click. Then in pressed, we can plug that into here, and then completed over here. And then the exec pin over here, we want to add a delay. So this should be the total duration of this animation. So it will be the length of this timeline plus the delay. So that's like 1.4 plus 2.7. And let's just say that's about 4 seconds. And then after completed, we can plug that into reset. So essentially only after one full animation cycle will it allow us to reload again. So let's check it out. So if you can hear, I'm pressing down R, but I can't do that. But after the animation came up, I can do it again. And of course, we want to set the ammo back to 0. So let's just break this link. We want to set ammo, and a fast way to do that is hold down Alt and drag. So it automatically goes to set, and we want to set it back to 6. Then we can just, from this pin over here, we want to plug that into reset. So let's check it out. I'm going to shoot. So I've shot, and now when I click, the line trace doesn't come up and the animation doesn't because we're out of ammo. When I click R, it's going to go down, and then it's going to come back up, and I should be able to shoot again, and I can. So yeah, let's just try that again, and I'm just going to shoot at the enemy to see if it's still working, and of course it is. So that's it for this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. Please suggest your tutorial ideas in the description. I'll be happy to make them. And also make sure to check out my other latest tutorial on how to create this first-person car without using any plugins. So thank you for that, guys. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and have a good day.